I'm Helga from Helga's Pennsylvania Cooking. Today we're going to work on a dish that it takes some time. There is no quick way to do this. If you try to cheat and do it quick, you will not get the desired results. This dish was actually has been requested for a while by one of my subscribers, and I'm finally getting around to making it because I actually took some time off and have time to make it. That's part of the deal with this. When I say it's not a quick dish to make, it's a minimum of 1 week. So, like I said, there's no shortcuts to the flavor in this. What are we making? Sauerbraten. Sauerbraten happens to be one of Germany's national dishes. It's wildly popular throughout the country, and different regions will change it up a little bit, but the basic recipe of sweet and sour and marinating your meat in that for up to a week, even up to 2 weeks, is pretty much the same. So I want to show you how we're going to get this started. Like I said, you marinate the meat for a week. It does all the tenderizing. The longer that you marinate it, the less cook time you have on the back end, and it really develops the flavors through it. Where did Sauerbraten come from? I was curious. I wanted to know. Because you know I like to know where my food comes from. So Sauerbraten, believe it or not, is a dish attributed to Julius Caesar. Supposedly he sent a shipment of beef to the new Roman settlement of Cologne, and he did it in this method, which marinating it. And Saint Albert the Great of Cologne, at that point in the 13th century, then made it a popular dish. So it has a long history, and you know, it makes sense. They didn't have ways to preserve meat back then other than the basics of pickling, marinating, salting, and smoking were the main ways to preserve your meat back then. You know, some climates had ice houses and stuff like that, but still, those were the main methods of preserving meat. Obviously it worked. We're still doing it all these years later. And it develops flavor in meat that you would never normally have. I guess originally they used horse for this. Yeah, we're not doing that. Nope. Beef is now the most common choice, although venison and lamb can also be used. I would love to try this with lamb. I never thought to try this with lamb, but I bet you it'd be out of sight. But anyhow, we're using a nice chuck roast today for this. This was requested by one of my subscribers, Ron Rummel. This is for you. And I'm going to be making this with some spätzle, so, which was another request, and I love spätzle anyway. And what brought all this about was I did here about a week ago my sweet and sour PA Dutch red cabbage, and that leads us, that's a common side dish to Sauerbraten. So I'm going to show you what goes into this. There's quite a bit, and it's not hard, it just takes time. So I'll show you what goes into this. The flavor is worth the wait. Okay, so there's quite a bit that goes into this. Some carrots and some garlic and some thyme and some whole cloves and bay leaf, sugar and salt and pepper, onion here, some flour, ginger snaps, raisins, honey, red wine vinegar, red wine, I have a Merlot, some bacon, my beef roast, and I have a couple of green onions here, or otherwise called scallions or spring onions. It actually calls for leeks, two leeks, but leeks are larger, they're more mild in flavor, and I can't always find them this time of year. So I'm substituting 2 spring onions or scallions for the leeks. Now I want to talk to you about something else here. The original Sauerbratens call for juniper berries. I can't find juniper berries anywhere locally, even in the bigger stores with more varied spice racks. So, and if you're in an urban area, you can probably lay your hands on them. I would have had to order them, and it's just not worth it to me for as often as I make something like this. So, but there's a hack for that. There's always a hack, people, always. And the hack is this. So the original recipe calls for 2 sprigs of rosemary. But rosemary is also a substitute for juniper berries. A sprig of rosemary for every 4 juniper berries. So I added a couple more sprigs because the original recipe that I like to go by calls for 8 juniper berries. So if you don't have juniper berries, don't sweat it. If you don't have leeks, don't sweat it. You know, these are all approximate, and it varies from region to region what they put in it anyway. Some people just do vinegar, some people do the wine and the vinegar. I like the wine and the vinegar better. But, you know, it's partly what you have and what you put together. But I like developing these flavors, and we'll show you how we're going to do that. So the next step's pretty easy. I'm using a stock pot, or you can use a large Dutch oven. Do not use cast iron for this. You have acidic materials here with the wine and the vinegar, which is what I use to strip cast iron before reseasoning. So you don't want to use cast iron for this. Anyhow, so I've got my stock pot. I'm going to add up all my diced veggies with my spring onions there, and my carrots, and my onion, and the first shot of rosemary, my second shot of rosemary for the juniper berries, some salt, some pepper, some garlic, and I will have the recipe down in the description below the video as always. 2 bay leaves, my thyme, the 6 cloves, a little bit of sugar. If I didn't say it in the original, 2.5 cups of water, cup of red wine vinegar, 2.5 cups of red wine, and I'm using a Merlot. Oh man, that smells good already. So we're going to bring this up to a boil. So we're up to a boil, and I'm going to cover this and let it simmer for 10 minutes. So the 10 minutes of simmering is up. And I just gotta tell you, man, the house smells amazing. Oh, that smells so good. So I'm gonna turn this off, and then the next step is we're going to take our roast, and we're going to nestle that into the Sauerbraten here. And I'm going to try and get this so it's all covered. I'll make sure it's all covered. If it's not covered, make sure you turn it once a day. So the minimum time to do this is 4 days, and that's really not enough. 7 days, a week is really good. You can go up to 2 weeks. And remember what I said, the more that you marinate it now, the less cook time it takes later for a really wonderful tender roast and Sauerbraten. So that's pretty well submerged, and we're going to go cover this, and I'm going to put it in the refrigerator. We'll let it cool down, put it in the refrigerator, and let it sit for a week. So by the time you see this, it'll probably be beginning of February. But we'll be having Sauerbraten Spätzle for beginning of February. Well, it's actually been longer than a week. It's been about 9 days. But like I said, you can do this up for a couple weeks. So the longer it actually goes in here, the shorter the amount of cooking time. So that's not bad. So, oh, you can see, look at the color on it from being in the wine and marinating. So I'm going to remove our roast like that, and you can see what it looks like here, all marinated. And put that over here. We're going to be searing that off in a minute. But the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to strain the vegetables out from the broth. And we'll be keeping both of those. So, next part is I'm going to cook a little bacon and go from there. See the broth. Next thing I'm going to do is take a couple paper towels and just pat the roast dry. Get the excess moisture out before we go and sear it quickly. And we're going to sear that on both sides well. Okay, have my bacon. We're going to keep this couple of tablespoons of fat because we're going to need it. I'm going to add the vegetables back in. Reduce the heat to low medium. And we're going to cook this for about 5 minutes. I am going to take out the herbs. But next we're going to add in the flour, and we're going to stir that a couple minutes so you get it mixed in with the fats. Get the flour taste out. Next we're going to add our reserved broth back in. And we're going to bring this up to a boil. You want to keep stirring it because this will thicken a little bit with that flour and fat mixture. I wish you could smell this. It just smells so good. And this, like I said, this is nowhere near a quick dish. It takes a while. But boy, is it good. And you can see how that changed color, so you can see that the flour fat mixture is mixing in. Like I said, keep on stirring it, and we're going to bring this up to a boil. This has come up to a boil now, and as you can see, it's thickened already into a gravy. And we have the sour part of this from the marinade, but now we have to make the sweet part. And you can see too why it's important to keep whisking, stirring as it heats up, because then you make for a nice smooth gravy and won't have lumps. So we're going to add a pack of raisins. We have a pack of raisins, around a tablespoon of honey, or a little more. hand around 3 ounces of crushed ginger snaps. They act a little bit as a thickener, but they also give it a really nice flavor. It gives it a richness. Oh my lord, I wish you could smell this. I remember when Emeril Lagasse used to have his cooking show back in the early days before there was all the Food Network and everything else like there is today. And he'd always say, oh, I wish you had smell-o-vision. I wish you had smell-o-vision. So we're going to return our roast to this, and I'm going to cover it, and we're going to let this simmer for a while, at least an hour, and depending on how it does, because it marinated a pretty long time, 1 to 2 hours is normal, but we'll start really looking at it after an hour and seeing where we're at. Look at the richness of that gravy. You know, you're developing flavors here, layers of flavors, and when you finally get to eat that, it is just going to punch you right in the mouth with all the flavor that it has. And that's not something that you can develop quickly all at once. You can't. You can come close, but you never have the depth. So we're going to take our seared steak, roast, just like doing that. Put some of that gravy I'm going to put this down low to a simmer and cover it up, and we'll check back in a while. Here's our Sauerbraten. You see the vegetables. Oh, and you can see it tender. Oh my goodness. Yeah, pork tender. So, we're gonna dish this up, and you know what comes next. Here she is, out on the plate. So here it is, and you're gonna see, look at that. That's a butter knife. Look at how tender that is. Oh my goodness. Just look how tender that is. Pork tender. Oh. See the goodness. How beautiful, tender that is. That's what, the longer it goes in that marinade, the more tender this is. I did this for about an hour and a half in that low simmer in that Sauerbraten mixture. So, now comes the tasting. So here's the Sauerbraten and Spätzle or Spätzle, however you want to say it, depending on who you are, plated up. Now for the taste test. So here's our Sauerbraten. Let's give it the taste test. Oh man. You see how juicy and yummy that is. Oh my god. That is so good. That just melts in your mouth. And you can taste the lime and the sweet flavors with it. A little hint of ginger snap. This is one of my favorite German dishes, and you pair this with the PA Dutch Sauerbraten cabbage, red cabbage, you have such a meal. And I paired it here with the traditional Spätzle. So let's give the Spätzle a try. And see how they came out. Yummy little dumplings of goodness. They're so good. That little hint of nutmeg and parsley gives them a little something that they're not just a plain dough. I know one thing, this tastes Moorish. I don't think this is going to last long. So, there's my Sauerbraten. It's not a quick meal, but it's a traditional meal. It's great with a chuck roast. That's what I use, is a nice big chuck roast. Give it a shot. It's well worth it. Pair it up with the cabbage and the spätzle and you have a full, wonderful German meal.